Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Thanks for dropping by again to Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis, sponsored by our friends at Trailtopia. We've moved on to episode number 69, and our guests today are JD and Amanda Antonen. I knew JD on the trail in 2014 as Yak. He was a ridiculously youthful-looking guy in his late 40s. Really, he could have passed for a 35-year-old. One of the things I learned about Yak as we sat and ate in a deserted shelter one night was a personal detail that I have never, ever heard from anybody else. Really. In fact, you'll hear from my first question that I doubted the truth of it at the time. His answer makes that personal detail even more amazing. You'll be hearing from Yak and his wife Amanda shortly. But before we get to our conversation, does anybody fancy some dessert? Do you remember those days on the trail when you really need to treat yourself? You know, those days when you fall in the mud or the rain starts running down your neck, the rocks are driving you crazy, or even when you're just fed up. You need a boost, and when that happens, stop hiking. Take off your pack and treat yourself to one of Trailtopia's scrumptious desserts. Why not go for Rocky Road pudding, a rich chocolate pudding loaded with mini marshmallows and toasted slivered almonds. By the time you get that into your system, you'll be warm, toasty and satisfied. Try Trailtopia Adventure Food, the best of home cooking away from home. And we're back. Now, in Dotspot this week, Lynn and I have a chat about our personal observations and experiences with regard to that rather strange phenomenon, post-trail depression. Some of you, I'm sure, will immediately be grimacing or about to turn off the show, or even worse, shouting at me, "This is just a bunch of baloney," you'll be saying, or worse to that effect. Yet for those of us who have lived it, it is real, it is visceral, and it comes right out of the blue. What Lynn and I wanted to do was to simply start a conversation about it and add our voices to the many out there. I tried to instigate a conversation on my Mighty Blue Facebook page this week by posting a clip from our conversation, but I may have screwed up the technology a bit, and it didn't appear quite as I'd hoped it would. Despite that, I hope that you add your own voices and tell us if you think you may have a solution as to how to avoid it, or even why you think it happens. If our little community can help just one person as they complete their hike later this year from the anguish that many of us have suffered in the past, then this conversation will have been more than worthwhile. So go on over to the site and join the conversation. Now, I'm going to introduce you to JD Antonen and his lovely wife, Amanda. Here they are. Right, I'd like to introduce another member of the class of 2014, and you think I'd be running out of them, really, wouldn't you? This is JD and Amanda Antonen. Is Antonen correctly pronounced, by the way?
That is right. That's the American pronunciation. Oh,
pretty cool. And JD was the one who hiked the trail before, and Amanda is planning to hike this year with JD, but we're going to come back to that. And JD, I had no idea that was his name on the trail. For me, he was Yak. And firstly, one thing we want to clear up straight away, or I want to clear up straight away, when we met, you told me that you'd been married, and I thought you were pulling my leg. You'd been married 6 times, and you seem to have this insatiable desire for wedding cake. Can you please update the status, as it has, after all, been about 3 years since we last spoke?
Yeah, it has. It has, Blue. I have to confess, I've been married 2 more times. So
oh my
total
gosh.
of 8. But I can tell you this, the best part is now I'm married to my best friend. Amanda and I have known each other for 11 years. And I mean, we're like 2 peas in a pod. We're laughing and giggling together all the time, and it's great.
It took you a long time to work that out, didn't it, really?
Yeah, I did. I guess I'm a hard learner.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we got that sorted out. And so you're on to your 8th wife. So, and I know that the 2 of you are planning to hike the AT this year. So let's have a bit of your hiking background before we get into it. Amanda, how much hiking or backpacking have you done in your life so far?
Not really any backpacking, but I've done a lot of hiking. I grew up in West Michigan. Did a lot of camping up north with my dad, being the oldest of 4 girls. I was pretty much made the tomboy of the family.
Uh-huh.
So I've spent a lot of time in the woods and on the water, and then I went to Oregon for a year, and we did a lot of hiking in Oregon. So I think I'm going to be okay with the hiking part. It's more the learning to hike with a pack on my back.
So you've done day hiking with a small pack or something, or just no pack at all?
Yeah, we're still getting her into the lingo, hiker lingo. Yeah, she was just a day hiker for a long time. I guess she just slack packing mostly, and I've converted her now. And now she's ready to become a real long distance hiker.
Yeah, but I tell you what, though, do not get rid of the concept of slack packing. Slack packing is great if you can, especially over some of those mountains. And what about you, JD? But what was your experience before you got on the AT?
Oh, before I came to the AT, I was in the Army. I was in it for 24 years. I was infantry.
Right.
So I've been up and over a few mountains in my day and time, and I went straight out to the AT after I retired, like a lot of gentlemen do.
Yes, they did. You notice that on the trail, didn't you? You met quite a few?
Oh yeah. It seems like everybody on the trail is, at a crux in their life where something's changing. Either they've graduated high school and are going to college, or they've graduated college and get ready to go into the workforce, or they've actually retired.
Yes,
so it
that was
puts
me.
that wider range of individuals out there. It was really cool about the AT.
Yeah, I thought that as well. So your experience was military experience. Did you ever do hiking as a hobby, or was it just part of the military?
It was always military. But I mean, while you're in the Army, you and your buddies while you're out there in the woods always talk about, hey, it'd be great doing this on our own, and doing it on our own terms and everything. So you always kind of look forward to that day where, okay, now nobody's in charge. I get to do what I want to do out here in the woods.
Well, like you say, when a lot of these guys come out of the military to try to, I guess, shake stuff out of their past and their history and things that have gone on and things they've seen, I guess, over the years, a lot of them tend to go on the AT. So what exactly was it that took you out on the trail that year then, JD?
2014, I was ready to go. I was having a lot of problems personally. Uh-huh. After I got out of the Army, I didn't realize I'd suffered a lot of PTSD. Uh-huh. And I also had my daughter pass. And I was having problems mentally. And so I decided to go out and clear my head. I had a good friend who always talked about the Appalachian Trail, and he'd always, for his whole life, talked to me about it, but never had the opportunity. And I went ahead and grabbed the nearest pack I could find and took off, and ended up through hiking the whole thing. And met some great people, and it turned out unbelievable. Was
that the plan to do the whole thing, or was it just a plan to go for a hike and see how far you got?
Well, for me, it was just pretty much to see how far I got to start with. And I got out there and I realized how much I loved it, how much it was doing for me mentally, improving my mood, improving everything about me. And I just couldn't stop.
Were you angry before you got on the trail then, or was it just you just wanted to clear your head?
Yeah, I was angry because a lot of things that go along with depression and
Sure.
anger and PTSD, and I came out there, and that was part of it, was meeting a new type of people. I mean, I'd been surrounded by the military my whole entire life, and it's a whole different mindset. And when I come out there, I was learning to accept help from people. And that's one big thing I did on the trail that kind of changed me. When I first got out there, I was so angry and depressed all the time that I was walking right past trail magic. And
wow.
And I was thinking, okay, after a while, you're like, wait a minute, nobody can complete this trail on their own. There's going to be one time, if you entirely thru-hike AT, there's going to be at least one time you're going to have to accept help from someone.
Yeah.
And that's what it taught me, that humility to be able to open up to people and accept help. And a lot of great people on the trail listened to me and listened to what things I went through and helped me out quite a bit.
And people are open to it, aren't they? It's surprising to me. A lot of people in what we might call real life aren't open to that conversation, are they? But on the trail, it's almost like you're stripped bare. You're in a shelter and you're all scooched up, getting your food ready, and you start talking about the most personal things sometimes. And that was one of the biggest shocks to me as well.
Yeah, you get to know a lot about people, and we laugh about it because you don't even know their real names, like you said, but you know some of the most details about them.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Yeah, it's really weird. So we now know what took you out on the trail, but how did you put your gear together? Did you take your military stuff, or did you look at trying to get some of the ultralight stuff?
Well, I knew about all the ultralight gear and everything. I'd read about it and looked through magazines and been online and stuff. But honestly, when I took off, I bought a Walmart backpack, and I was weighing out at close to 54 pounds when I checked in at the Appalachian Center there at Amicalola Falls. And
wow.
I was so determined. It didn't matter what I had with me. I just took off. I had actually an Army poncho. But I'd lost so much weight throughout the trip that I went ahead halfway through. I switched over to an Army rucksack just for nostalgia's sake.
God, you're crazy. That's a crazy thing to do. Yeah, and I know you're going to do it again, and we're going to talk about that later. But would you prepared, and are you preparing differently? Don't go into details, but has your experience on the AT helped you prepare for this new trip?
Oh yeah. I'm excited about all the new gear and equipment that's out there. I'm not going to be running around being one of these guys preaching ultralight, but yeah, I'm excited about all the new equipment and everything that's going on, and the technology.
Oh yeah.
I mean, to be able to stay in contact with people and stuff, it's awesome now. It
is amazing. So did you think that and I think a number of people I've spoken to about this have said that it did. Do you think your military background helped you on the AT, because you had a discipline, I guess, in the military, and the discipline of the AT is often a case of doing the same thing every day, isn't it? Sleep, get up, eat, walk, sleep, go to bed. I mean, is that basically what you were doing? And did that, because of your military background, did you find it a natural fit for you?
Yeah, I definitely did. That I guess you'd call it monotony. It was something that kind of just wrapped around me, and I felt a little safer doing stuff like that, and I felt I was back in my element, a bit there, and it was really good. It was
the meaning of the word monotony, and I've had this conversation with a couple of other people about one of the things you have to put up with is the boredom. I never felt bored. Did you?
No, I never really did. It was always, you were seeing a new place every day, and you had a new campsite every evening, and it was just the excitement of that, being like an explorer or discoverer, while you're out there.
Oh, totally, yeah. Now, I know that you and I were at a shelter once near Glasgow, a place called Matt's Creek Shelter. And I know that we had terrible storm that night, and unfortunately, I was in my tent, and you were in the shelter. By the time it started raining so hard, I just couldn't have got to the shelter. It was just so wet. But I know that you had even worse weather one night, shortly after we separated on the trail. Tell us about that particularly bad spot of weather you hit.
Yeah, that was a night in Pennsylvania. It was one of those days, where it's like, oh, we'll wait to eat dinner later. Let's push in a couple more miles here and go. And I always had the idea of, well, let's finish the day at the top of the hill. So when you get up in the morning, it's just a good morning stretch going downhill, and everything's great. And I thought after I left you that day, I would just push on up to the top of the hill. And it was only a quick, 2.5 miles up there, and the sun was out, and everything was fine. Well, I had my radio on going up the hill, and as I went up, there was a pretty big boulder field up on my right, and of course a lot of wooded off to my left, and the weather started getting terrible just quickly, and it was raining, and it started pouring down rain, and I figured, okay, well, you're already wet, push to the top of the hill. It just continued to get worse, Blue, and I didn't know where it was coming from. I looked down to my left, and it got so bad that there was to my left, about 100 yards down the hill, I started seeing branches flying off of trees from the wind and stuff. And I realized that it was a microburst tornado. And I literally had to get over to the boulders on my right and hold on for dear life while I watched while all of the limbs were flying around. And luckily it was only on the ground for maybe about a minute and a half, and it took back off. And it was one of the most amazing things that ever happened to me. As soon as it got done, the sky cleared, and it was like okay, you can go back hiking now.
I've got to warn everybody, by the way, and just in case listeners are getting ready to go out there this year, this is very rare. I've never heard of this, but you can get quite severe weather, and it can be blowy, it can be rainy, but to have to hold on to a boulder while everything's flying around you, that's not good at all, is it?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. Hiking the Appalachian Trail, people ask me a lot, how much did you deal with inclement weather? And usually the best answer I give them is, out of the entire time I was out there, 5.5 months, I probably spent maybe 8 days literally walking in the rain.
Yeah. We had a very good year that year, though, didn't we? Didn't you notice? People did say. I mean, there are other years. I think 2003 is the year when it just apparently rained the whole 6 months, which would have been a bloody nightmare. I would think myself. Now, as many people have said, you were hit by depression when you finished, and this is a subject that needs a far bigger conversation, really, I guess. But how did you work your way through it, and how did it manifest itself?
Well, everybody experienced that depression coming off the trail because it's just such a sensory input being out there all the time. Every day, it's beautiful, and like we talked about the things that happen to you out there. But when you come back, usually one of two things happens. Either you immediately have depression, or you throw yourself back into work immediately, and it stalls for a while, and depression comes a little bit later on. Yes. I think for me, it was later on, because I started working as soon as I got back. I'd opened my private investigation business and just threw myself into my work. But I can tell you this, once I slowed down after about the first year, I really started feeling it. I was like, wow, I got to get back out there. It's pulling me. And the next year I just ended up moving out to Oregon, back to one of my home states. And, because I just wanted to be back in the woods. Yes. I really did.
Yeah. So you got out of it and you feel better. Now the two of you, this is not a random thing that you're starting this in 2018, and this is where we're going to involve you again, Amanda. And I just wanted JD to share his story of his 2014 hike. You decided to do it together, which I've got to tell you is fraught with all sorts of issues. Going for 6 months with your best friend or your wife, or you're going to have your relationship tested, I'm sure. How and when did you decide to do this? And what's your story of why you're doing it? Because you've both got quite compelling stories about it. Why don't you go first, Amanda?
Well, this is something I said I'd never do. So this is kind of a...
That's the spirit.
I don't mind the day hiking and stuff like that. I mean, we've done quite a few miles day hiking. And I always said to him, I said, you're crazy. I could not do that for 6 months. I just don't, I have really thick hair. So, that's the first thing as a woman I think about, what am I going to do for 6 months with my hair?
Shave it off. Shave it off. It's okay. I shaved all mine off. Shave it off.
That's the plan, actually. I am going to shave
good girl. Awesome.
It's kind of it's a test for me because my hair is very important to me. So to do something like this is crazy, but I think hiking for 6 months can be, I guess, just as crazy. So
Amanda, let me give you a promise. You will not be in the least bit worried, and you certainly won't be out of place on the trail with a shaved head as a woman. You'll be fine. You'll be great.
I have a lot of hats.
Okay, go with that. Let's go with the hat then.
So I told JD, I'd never do it, and it got to one night. I've been working on a little web page, or my little Facebook page called Project Daddy, and I work with a lot of parents that get caught up in the family court system. Yeah. And I've had my own personal experience with the family court system, and I just walked out one day and I looked at JD and he was sitting there, and I said, I got to do something big. I want to do something big in my life and make my kids proud of me. And I looked right at him and I said, we're hiking the AT in 2018, and I could have pushed him over with a feather. The look on his face was priceless, and I think it took him a good week to really realize that I was serious, because I kept talking about it, and he kept going, he kept giving me that look, are you serious, or are you pulling my leg? And it took him a good week to realize I was serious about the whole thing, and here we are.
Yeah. What's that? Hang on. Tell us about Project Daddy then. What actually is that?
Project Addie is more of an advocacy thing, I guess, for me. We have a big issue with the family court system in the United States, and it's bigger in other countries, but it's getting big here. And a lot of children are getting pulled from homes and put in foster care, and we have a lot of parents that are lost and stuck and can't afford attorneys. And just like with JD's cause, M22, and the rate of the suicides, we have a lot of parents that are going down the same road, and they don't have that advocacy or that help.
So you're trying to raise awareness of this issue. Are you trying to raise funds, or are you just trying to raise awareness?
I'm raising awareness. I do have a donation site set up on GoFundMe, and what I'm doing is there's another organization that I've been kind of working with. It's called Punished for Protecting. And right now they're getting ready to train about, I couldn't even tell you how many people, but they're getting ready to train a whole bunch of people in a bunch of different states just to be able to teach us how to be there for other parents in our situation, and to get ourselves out there and say, hey, there is support, there is help, and we're here for you, so that they're not sitting there without their children and going through that depression and just thinking that they're all by themselves, because they're not. We go, there's a lot of parents, moms, dads alike, that go through this, that want to be, either they just get caught up in the system, or they want to be a part of their kids' life. There's 53 million parents out there that spend the holidays without their kids. And
really, oh my gosh!
Due to the court system, you have you get your parenting time, and a lot of parents pay a lot in child support, and they only get 2 weekends a month with their children, but they want more time. And because of the way the family court system's set up, you have to pay either a lawyer to get that time, or you have to really fight. And that's kind of what we're doing, is we're advocating for these parents that don't know how to work their way through the family court system, so that they can get where they want to be and be a part of their child's life.
That's a really good cause to follow then. So you're going to, on the trail, you're going to meet people in shelters. You're just going to just tell them your story and just get the word out there. Cool. Like it.
That's kind of the plan. We have, I think, 13 towns that we're stopping in. I think it's 13 that I have that we're actually going to be stopping in, and I have a lot of support. So there's going to be the towns that we have that we've picked that we're stopping in, we're actually going to take 0 days.
Right.
And this is where it's going to allow me to meet up with parents like myself to be able to meet face-to-face, talk about each other's situation, kind of like a little support group on the way.
That's great. That's really good.
So we can pull more people together and be able to say, and to be able to exchange information and be able to help somebody else down the road.
Do you realize, by the way, of course, Amanda, that is not what a 0 day really is. A 0 day is doing your laundry and eating and drinking excessively. But that's fine. Yours is the other way of doing it. So...
Yeah, that comes out of necessity, I think, too.
I'm trying to learn this lingo, and it is not easy, but I'm trying.
I'm sure you are. So what's your cause you're working on? Because I know that Amanda sort of alluded to it just now.
Yeah, I'm hiking for a cause called N22, and what that stands for is the 22 veterans a day commit suicide in the United States, or more. And because the numbers aren't reported very well, but what we want to do is end that. And I met 2 gentlemen on Facebook about a year ago, and they established this page, a support page for veterans. This Veterans Helping Veterans is our biggest motto, and they're there for anybody that ever needs to talk or wants to talk to someone with the same things, that been through the same things they have. And this organization helped me quite a bit. I guess, I dealt with my daughter passing. They help a lot of survivors and dealing with that. But these are an awesome organization, and I support them 100%. I want to be out there and be their unofficial ambassador for N22. I'll have my big banner with me this year, and I'll be putting it up whenever we stop.
Cool.
Yeah, to meet veterans out there on the trail again is going to be awesome, because I know we had a few experiences in 2014 that were pretty amazing.
So without getting political about it, is the Veteran Administration not handling that, or is that something where people fall through the cracks?
Well, they're handling it and they're doing the best they can, but we have such bigger numbers now of individuals with PTSD and other things that are coming out of the military. I mean, we've been a nation at war for 12 plus years now that people don't realize. We still have guys coming back this way.
Sure.
I did personally. People don't realize that it's a lot like it used to be. I mean, I did 4 tours of combat, as an infantryman, and that's what they used to do in Vietnam and things like that. But nowadays, it's a lot different war. It really is. And when these guys that come back are dealing with serious issues and serious problems, and it's 45% of our individuals that come back that are this way. And it's a hard thing to come up with, but like I said, the biggest thing though is veterans helping veterans, because you wouldn't believe the difference between talking to someone, that's been through a lot to talking with someone who's been through the same experiences as you.
I tell you what, man, I'm listening to you talk about this, and I'm imagining the scene. The two of you arrive at a camp, and you come to a shelter, and you just, because you know what it's like, don't you? You just sit there and you chat, don't you? And all barriers are broken down very, very quickly. I think you're going to get a very receptive audience, and obviously nobody wants somebody lecturing them every single shelter, but at the same time, you can talk about what you're doing, and people are very open to listening, aren't they?
Oh, they are. I can remember 2014. I mean, if there had been a copy of basket weaving sitting in a shelter, when I stopped, I'd probably stop and read it. Something to do and curiosity. One of the greatest things I enjoyed too was the lack of Google. And that's why it cracks me up every time I see these TV commercials now where everybody says, okay, Google. Well, they didn't have that on the trail anymore. That's one big thing that goes away when you're out there is that, okay, when you're sitting around a campfire, you can't fact check somebody on Google anymore. You have to
did you? I noticed that at nearly all the shelters that I stopped at, and I always stopped at a shelter if I could, at nearly all the shelters, there was no coverage, no cell coverage, no obviously no data coverage. So you literally did have to talk to each other. And it's a surprisingly different thing. And I think for a few days, 1 or 2 people had to get used to it. And I think 3-4 years down the line from when we went, JD, then it's only got worse, hasn't it? People are more and more tied to their phones, and it's going to be interesting to see how people can adapt to being away from that, the accessibility of phones. Yeah,
I adopted a pretty good regime while I was out there, which made it easy. And you're right, at the shelters, you didn't have a whole lot of coverage because they were always in a beautiful spot or way up high or something like that. And what I adopted was when you took off and you reached a high point, you go ahead and check your cell phone and turn it on. If you got a bar, then your text messages come flying in, and then you answer them all and flying back out and take off again.
That's exactly what I did. Now, Amanda, are you looking forward to sharing the trail with your husband? I mean, this is not an easy thing you're taking on here, and I'm not trying to scare you at all. But this is quite a physically challenging thing. But between the two of you, sharing each other's space all the time, how are you looking forward to that?
We kind of share space all the time anyway. It's him being retired, and then I stay home, so we are together 24/7. I think I'm prepared just because we spent 7 months in Oregon volunteering, and we lived in a 26-foot trailer for 7 months. So
wow.
I think that the trail's going to be actually a little bit better for us because we actually have that space a little bit more than being in a camper. But I don't think it's really going to be a challenge. I think that it's a place that we both really, really feel at home. And I think that I think it's actually going to bring us closer together in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not going to say that there's never going to be an issue because we are married. So, I think if anything, it's going to bring us closer together, and we're already best friends. So if it gets better than that, hey, I'm all for it.
Oh, that's fantastic attitude. It really is a great attitude. But it's going to be different for you, though, Yak, isn't it? Because you've got a different hike than what you had before. You were quite a powerful walker. I remember walking behind you. I thought I was walking fast, but you were just pulling ahead of me all the time. And you're quite powerful. Are you approaching the whole hike differently? Are you looking at it as a couple now?
I am. It's a sightseeing event almost now for me. I mean, that's what's exciting about it. There's a lot of things I did miss, and I tell you what, I'll tell you a story. McAfee Knob, the last hill going up to that, is a long flowing left hill. But as you start at the bottom there's this one spot that's just beautiful off to the right. And it's a farmhouse and all this grass. And I don't know if you remember it, but it was pretty breathtaking. But
I do.
That day when I was walking down there, I was wearing my headphones, and I remember Prince was playing on the radio, and I was singing at the top of my lungs. And I remember you laughed when I listened to you talk to Bruce about bears and singing. But as I was coming down, I looked to my right, and there was a giant black bear standing about maybe 10 yards away from me.
Wow.
And, of course, it scared the crud out of me. And I immediately, first thing I did, of course, was make eye contact, which you're not supposed to do.
Yes. Well done. Good effort.
And so I started heading up the hill. And the bear kind of stuck about 100 yards down the hill from me. And he kind of tracked me up as I was headed up towards McAfee's Knob and started getting a little paranoid. And by the time I got up to McAfee's Knob, I was so paranoid, wasn't checking my map, didn't realize where it was, and I'd blown by McAfee's Knob by about 2 miles. I actually never even got a photo or even was able to barely look over the side from the trail.
That has got to be a record. That has got to be. I don't think I've met anybody who didn't get their picture at McAfee's Knob.
Yeah, this year is going to be a little different. It's a lot of really cool stuff out there, and it's hard to take it all in one hike.
Yeah, you're blessed to have the opportunity to do it a second time, really, aren't you? Because the opportunity doesn't come to everybody in their life. Some would love to do it, but they just can't because of certain circumstances. And taking that opportunity when you could, so when Amanda suggested doing the trail again, was that something you were totally on board with straight away, or did you really have to be persuaded?
No, I was ready to leave right then and there. I was like, hey, let's get the gear. We'll be waiting there at Emacolo Falls as soon as the weather breaks.
Yeah. So what are you doing back here? Are you sleeping in tents, shelters, hammocks? What are you doing?
Well, I've tried to warn Amanda about how bad people smell on the trail. And that's one thing I wasn't thinking about when she actually told me the first time was, wow, I actually have to share a tent with somebody else who's been hiking all day long.
Oh, yeah.
So we've been leaning towards hammocks quite a bit.
Oh, really? Do you know what? I think that could save a lot of things, a lot of issues. I think that would definitely save a lot of issues if you did that. Very nice. So what's your level of confidence, Amanda, then, in actually getting to the end? You say you're happy with the happy hiking. You're happy hiking with Yak as well, with JD as well. Oh, by the way, before I get on to that question, are you going to remain Yak?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with Yak 2.0.
That's very good.
Because you guys out there named Yak, but yeah, I think that's a good one.
And what about you, Amanda? What's your trail name going to be? Or are you going to leave it to fate and let somebody name you?
No, JD's already named me.
Oh yeah.
And,
what are you?
Walks with Fire.
Walks with. Oh, nice. I like it. Very nice.
Yeah, she's my tall redhead, and then the other joke about it is that she's the one that'll borrow your lighter and you'll never see it again.
Very good. So what is your level of confidence, Amanda, that you're actually going to finish this thing? Because, I love the idea of setting out and doing it, and I love the idea that the way JD did it in 2014, he went to see how far he could go, and he happened to go all the way. Are you approaching it that way, or are you actively saying, we're going to get all the way to the end here?
I think it's a little bit different for me. I've been getting on like the websites and on the Facebook pages and reading people's stuff, and I'm not really finding myself where a lot of people are. I don't think it's more of a tough guy thing for me. I think this is more of a spiritual and a life kind of a big life event for me. So there's a lot of emotion that goes into it. If I finish. That's my goal, is to finish. So I'm definitely going to push myself, as much as I can to get to the end. I can't, predict what happens on the trail. I could get hurt. Anything could happen.
Yes.
But my confidence level is high. I have a pretty high confidence level. I have a lot of experience in the woods and with nature. So I think that I'm going to be okay, and my confidence level is pretty high. It's more my emotions that I worry about. I've been thinking about that a lot. As I from what I've seen and what I've read is, people go through that happy, and then you kind of, you start really thinking about life and yourself and other people, and just going on that emotional roller coaster. But I think that's what it's going to be for me, is more of an emotional learning experience, and finding myself in a different way, in a different light.
And of course, you've got the accountability of the people you intend to meet, which I think is a really good thing to have as well. You're intending to meet these people for these 0 days, so you're going to try that much harder to make sure you get there, aren't you? I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's one of my biggest motivations is knowing that I have, I'm meeting with people, and they're expecting me to be there, and it's a really good feeling to have that support, and it's not just me in my head going, oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do this, because either way, even if I don't finish, I feel that I put my heart into it.
Yeah, great. Now, 2 more questions I want to ask you. I know, JD, you've already alluded to the fact that you learned quite a bit about yourself on the 2014 hike. Are you hoping for not transformation, Amanda, but are you hoping to learn stuff about yourself? You say it's a spiritual type journey. Almost be careful what you wish for. You learn so much I find you've learned so much about yourself on the trail. You expecting and you open to those changes in yourself?
Yeah, I've always considered myself quite the chameleon through life. I've always been the type to get along with other people. It didn't matter. I love learning different cultures and learning different things. So yeah, I think that.
You're ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. As far as life changing goes, I'm definitely ready for a new adventure and to learn some new things and meet some new people.
That's cool. And the last question is really, will the hike, or do you expect the hike to be a catalyst for more involvement in your respective causes? Because this is something that you're doing to bring awareness, but I'm sure there's stuff you can do after the hike to maintain your involvement in those causes.
Oh, absolutely. My goal after this is to really, I'm obviously going to be meeting a lot of people. So I'd like, whoever I meet or whoever I come in contact with, as far as my hike for my cause, for Project Daddy and for Punish for Protecting, is I really, I want to let people know that, you can get out there and you can speak up, and it doesn't matter how you do it. I chose the trail. Other people, choose to do it different ways. But I plan on staying in touch with all these people, and who knows, maybe in a couple of years or another year we'll go do the PCT.
Oh man, you're getting crazy. You're in your middle age. Oh gosh. Funny. Well, look, it's been lovely talking to you guys. Nice meeting you, Amanda, and great to hear from you again, JD. And I really appreciate it. And I'm going to include all the links from the places you've mentioned in the show notes, just so people can go to the website to learn more about it, and send me a GoFundMe link and all those things. And it's been a real pleasure talking to you.
You too, Blue. And I want to thank you so much for what you're doing too, and bringing awareness to the trail.
Appreciate it, mate. Appreciate it. I'd love to know, once you've done it, get back in contact and we can go through it again and have another little chat on the show.
Sure will. That would be great talking to you again.
Okay, mate. Have a good time. I'll speak to you soon. All the best.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Well, he certainly sounds happy with wife number 8. Maybe 8th time is the charm. I certainly hope so. A couple of takeaways for me, apart of course from the 8 weddings, were that JD had always found it difficult to accept help from people until he came to the trail. He soon learned that hiking the AT gets to be a collaborative effort, with friends, family and other hikers, trail magic or trail magicians contributing to your success. That is an important lesson to learn, and one that comes to us all pretty quickly. The other thing that really struck me was that Amanda's project, her passion, was the catalyst for undertaking this hike. Like most blokes, JD was more than happy to get back on the trail, but Amanda had a drive greater than herself encouraging her to do this. I thought she was very inspiring. I'm adding the links to both great causes, and I urge you to check those links in the show notes. One last thing about JD and Amanda. I loved what she said near the end about spending 6 months on the trail with JD. She said that they're already best friends, and if it gets better than that, I'm all for it. You cannot be more positive than that, can you? Now we've got DocSpot, and as you heard from JD, he was blighted by depression sometime after he left the trail. This conversation is necessary, if only to warn hikers that there can be a downside to trudging through the woods for 6 months. It doesn't happen to everybody, though from our conversations over the last 16 months of this podcast, it is definitely a thing. Here's Lynn and me. Okay, we're back with Dr. Lynn. Hi Lynn, how are you?
I'm a little cold. It's -15 with the wind chill where I am today.
I cannot see that catching on. Oh, how awful. Well, I know it's pretty cold in Florida as well, so we're probably a little bit cooler, warmer than that, though. And, of course, I'm still going around in shorts, as one does when one lives down here. We're going to talk about something today, and we've got nothing really arranged other than we know it's an issue on the trail for long-distance hikers and for section hikers, and it's some form of post-trail depression. And I'm very, very reluctant to put too big a label on it, but it seems to be so real to a number of people that we've spoken with, and yet others don't seem to have suffered from it at all. And I'm just wondering, Lynn, I don't know whether you've experienced it yourself. I know you did do the Connecticut section this year. How did that go, and how did you feel once you'd done that?
Yeah, I did the Connecticut section. My goal at the beginning of the summer was to complete the entire portion of the Connecticut Trail by the end of the summer, and I did it. And for the thru-hikers, that might not sound really that big of a deal, but I actually had to do it in day hikes. Yeah. Where I had to drive up there, get up and get there at like 6, 7 o'clock in the morning, plan out my hike back to the car, and then drive home. Yeah. One day I actually had to do it before I got in for work at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So,
oh my gosh,
I did the section that's really flat by Falls River. I said, okay, that's a 3-mile section. It's flat. I know I can do it and get back in time to go to work. So for me, it was actually a really important accomplishment. And when I completed it, and my completion was actually on top of Shagtacoke Mountain, so that was like my little mini Katahdin. It was just amazing and an amazing feeling. I was so excited. Somebody happened to actually be at the mountain right then and there and took my picture. And so I have that. And I posted it on the Facebook page, Appalachian Trail Section Hikers, and got all these amazing, wonderful, positive responses. Over 700 likes, over 80 actual comments, and I felt great. But then I was back in the real world, and I told people about this. And other than my immediate family, people didn't quite get what I had done. And it was a little bit of a letdown.
It's not that they don't quite get it. They have no idea. I mean, isn't it really? They just have no idea, and I know we all become hiking bores at some stage when we talk to our friends and family for 2 or 3 months, and then their eyes start glazing over because you've told them all your stories, and you're then on to the second or third telling, and people think, well, look, we've had that one already. We know what's happened. And yet you meet a hiker and you talk about an achievement, even, what you said, doing Connecticut, that is an achievement for you. And talking to another hiker would entirely understand that, wouldn't they?
Oh, absolutely. I do have a couple of hiking friends that were just so excited about it. But even my colleagues at work who know how much of a hiker I am, their comments were, "Ooh, weren't you scared?" Or "How do you hike alone?" Or not the excitement of accomplishment, but more of the things that a non-hiker would latch onto. And that wasn't the stuff I wanted to talk about. I wanted to talk about the gorgeous views or this amazing, meal I made on the trail or something. And you're right, people who are non-hikers, they sometimes just don't get it. They don't get what an accomplishment it is to make a meal on the trail, because for them, you can just go down a local deli and order a sandwich.
Well, you can do that a lot in New York as well. So there are a bunch of delis, and they're great, by the way. But I must say, for when I finished the trail, I don't think I put the label of depression upon it, but I was definitely down for 3 or 4 months. I mean, badly down. I started. I came back and basked in the glory for a few weeks, and that was great. And then you think, well, what happens now? What's next? And I think it's this thing that you used to get up every single day and you had a goal in mind every single day. And 1 or 2 people I've spoken with, certainly in recent weeks, funnily enough, in the interviews, they've had something to do immediately after they finished. And as soon as they've had something to do, a lot of those who've had something to do didn't then get depressed. It's those who come back with with nothing to do at all. They suddenly started feeling a depression or a sadness or a nothingness that was there. I mean, I think of Jessa, who was the lady we followed last year, all year long, all our hike, as much as we hike as we could. And she got back home on the Wednesday. She started working a law practice on a Monday afterwards. So she didn't allow herself the time to reflect too much upon the hike. She just got straight to work. And she didn't suffer from any downtime at all. And losing your focus was something I started telling people. I seem to have lost all of my focus in those early months. It was only when I started writing my book that I started feeling a bit better.
Yeah, I think that's the way people will approach any type of a major accomplishment, whether it's graduating from either high school or college. If you know what you're going to do next, it makes it easier to move on with life. I see oftentimes people will not quite know what they're doing next, and they tend to get bogged down. Or if you go on some sort of an amazing trip, it doesn't necessarily have to be a thru-hike. Anything that's really wonderful and an uplift and bucket list style of adventure. Okay, what's next? It's always the what's next that sometimes will bring people down.
Yeah, but I've never experienced this before. I tell you, it was a very uncomfortable feeling for me personally to feel so useless and unable to do stuff. And I'd start the day with a list of things I wanted to do. And I remember one day looking at my list at the end of the day, there was not a single thing crossed off it. It wasn't that I hadn't tried to do stuff. I didn't seem capable of doing it. And in fact, one of my mates, who was a Vietnam vet, he said to me, "You're suffering from a little bit of PTSD," which is ridiculous. No one was shooting at me. No, I wasn't in any danger. But they said, even though it was awful over there in Vietnam, when we came back, we were treated badly anyway. And we suddenly realized that all the purpose we had when we were in Vietnam, we didn't have it anymore. We appear to have no purpose at all. In fact,
I think
our fellow citizens hated it.
Purpose is the key thing. It's funny you said that about PTSD, because when I was kind of thinking about how our conversation might go today, I got that exact same thought process. People, again, coming back from a vacation, or people coming back from a tour of duty, or people coming back from college, any of that. It's a major life change.
Yeah.
And, we had, the thru-hikers had this wonderful, great experience, but now there's a major life change. You don't have to have a bad experience in order to have that major life change. It just has to be a sea change.
Yeah.
And that may be what people are having an issue with. They have to get into a new routine. Something else a little bit I thought about when people say, especially with coming back from the trail and coming back into the civilized world, is, on the trail, it was very simple. You got up, you ate, you packed, you walked,
yes.
You rested, you ate, you slept. When you come back into the civilized world, there's all this stuff that you have to do, or you feel compelled to do.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if maybe there's just an overload of things that people feel compelled to do, and they can't get their minds around how to do it. So maybe dialing back and simplifying all the things that you think you need to do, where you really don't need to do all of those things. And maybe that will help put people more into a forward motion, because instead of having 20 things to accomplish, they only have 5. Yeah. And it's a lot easier to accomplish that.
I think I remember when I was flying back from, I think, Bangor Airport, feeling very, very calm and very accomplished. And by accomplished, I mean I'd done an accomplishment. And I felt very good about that. And I felt, this is just marvelous. I want to feel this way the rest of my life. But I immediately fell back into all the distractions. Facebook, for God's sake. I mean, I'm hate myself for going on Facebook as much as I do. And the irony of this, of course, is I want to open up this conversation with people on Facebook. And I've got, quite a few of you are already on my Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail Facebook page, but I'd love to know what your experiences are. And if we can somehow have a conversation about it without trolling each other, please, no trolls, by talking about how you coped with things when you got back. I know some people are going to think, oh, this is pathetic, because they didn't feel that way. But those of us who did feel that way, it's really very real, and it's a visceral thing. And I know I'm struggling with knowing what to say about it, but I know what it feels like, and I know that a lot of people know what it feels like. And I know that if they could find an answer, or at least listen to one or two other people suggesting an answer, then that would be helpful to them. And what you said just now, agreeing with the word purpose. Purpose is perhaps the thing to look for when you get back, without allowing yourself to bask too long in the glory, because you'll start wallowing in the mire, won't you?
Right. You have to know that you yourself accomplished something great. But also you have to say, okay, I'm one of a lot of people who may have accomplished something really great this year. Maybe a friend, again, I use the whole thing, graduated from college and got this great job. Maybe another friend battled cancer and now is in remission. So everybody has their own really great thing that they've accomplished. And your own personal one is great, and it's just as great as the next person. So, maybe you find somebody who did something great, and you can, and it might not be something from the trail, but you can exchange stories and the good parts of it and the bad parts of it, and really have a connection. Wow, boy, we really accomplished something this year. How cool is that?
Sense. That makes sense. Yeah. Well, we're just trying to start the conversation here. And those of you who think this is a nothing burger, then that's fine. I don't think it is myself. But for those of you who are interested, please, I'm going to put something on Facebook. Contribute and let us know what you think. And, Lynn and I will talk about it again once we see the responses. In a couple of weeks' time, we may even talk about it again. But thanks for that, Lynn. I think it's just starting a conversation, no more than that. All right?
Right.
Okay.
This was terrific.
Lovely. Good to talk to you, and I'll speak with you soon.
Take care.
Cheers,
Bye-bye.
then. Bye. Now, I know there was nothing desperately deep there. That was an attempt to dig a bit deeper. Go to the Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail Facebook page and share your stories, and, if you have them, your solutions. Write to me at steve@mightyblueontheat.com, and I'll read out some of the responses. If you don't want me to read out yours, or if you'd rather I didn't mention your name, please let me know in the email. We've got a couple more 5-star iTunes reviews today. Oh, by the way, somebody left me a 3-star review and didn't leave a comment. Not only did he or she tick me off, they didn't tell me why. It's so frustrating. How can we improve unless you tell us? Anyway, Genmo42 and her husband have a long-distance hiking trail on their bucket list. She tells us that my husband and I regularly text each other just to say, "Did you listen to the most recent podcast? Isn't that interesting?" I'm glad you feel that way, Genmo42, because that's exactly how I feel when I hear some of our guests. OnStep says, "I'm planning on completing my thru-hike of the she says AR, she probably means AT, of the AT this coming 2018, starting in March. This podcast has helped me prepare for the big trek. I'm really glad that it's helping, OnStep." Last week, I wasn't quite sure who next week's guest was going to be, and not wishing to break the run, I've got no idea this week either. You're going to just have to come back and find out. Now, I know that some of you have been listening to our other show, Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail Dream, and I want to thank you for your support there. For those of you who haven't got into it yet, I think you're going to love this past week's episode. Bruce put together the 8 songs that he'd like to take with him if only 8 were allowed. Apart from giving us some great music, we got more insight into Bruce. Check it out wherever you get your podcasts. We've now moved on to the part of the show where I read Earl Schaefer's Walking with Spring. If you're new to the show, you might want to check out our back catalogue, because the first, I think, 58 episodes were chapters from my 2 books about the AT, my Appalachian Trail 1 and 2. They're also still available as ebooks and printed books on Amazon, and you can even get the printed books from me at a discount for the pair. So, Back to old Schaefer. I was delighted to learn that, like me, and as we heard Yak, he loved to sing out loud on the trail. He spends a lovely few days in beautiful Shenandoah. How bad can that be? I'll see you next week. Chapter 6, Shenandoah. The charms of Shenandoah are its foaming waterfalls, its legends and its vistas, and its geologic walls. The Shenandoah National Park is especially valuable because it is located near densely populated areas of the East Coast. Yet it is high and wild and picturesque. The city of Washington is only about 50 miles away. The Skyline Drive allows thousands of people to visit the park as motorists, but a network of trails also allows backpackers and afternoon hikers to reach the backcountry. The Appalachian Trail, which was there first, crosses the high summits while the roadway swings back and forth at gap level. The unique topography of the Shenandoah Range make this compromise possible. My side trip to Waynesboro had taken most of the morning. Before I could get away from Rockfish Gap, a patrol truck stopped and Ranger Pete Johnson greeted me by name. He too had heard about that lone trail hiker. We talked almost an hour in friendly fashion. He said the shelters would be plentiful, a welcome change from the scarcity since New River. He gave me a fire permit before leaving. The weather was sunny as I hurried off to make up time, and I managed to cover the 20 miles to Black Rock Shelter. The first 7 miles were high pasture land outside the park, then more of the same, still retaining some traces of the hill farms once located in the hollows. Black Rock Shelter was nicely built of stone near a good spring. In the morning I was yodeling a Jimmy Rogers song at the top of my voice when a grouse hen suddenly fluttered ahead. Stopping instantly and looking at the ground in front of my feet, I spotted tiny chicks hiding among the leaves. The mother edged closer, ruffling her feathers like an angry cluck. The chicks panicked and scattered in every direction, cheeping in terror, while the mother hen practically perched on my toe, a striking example of a wild mother in defence of her young. Soon the trail broke out of timber to more grassland, and a cold headwind chilled my face and hands. The panoramic views were much like those in the Smokies. Once again I marvelled at the growth on the crests of the southern Appalachians. Farther north this would be timberline. I was resting on a bank at Simmons Gap when another Park Service truck came up and District Ranger Hopper introduced himself, having heard about me from Pete Johnson. We were discussing wood ticks, which were becoming a problem, when Pete himself came up. He said that 3 girls had started from Waynesboro to hike to Waynesboro, Pennsylvania, but were on the road thumbing the first day, and he had driven them a few miles so they could stay at a shelter. He said I was moving too fast to meet up with them despite their hop-and-skip methods. Ranger Hopper remained to talk longer, telling of a man rock climbing ahead of him who had carelessly put his hand within a few inches of a sleeping rattler. When informed of this afterward and shown the rattler, he almost fainted from shock. On an adjoining hillside were the buildings of a hill farm, home of an old mountaineer couple. The ranger said they would be delighted to keep me overnight and feed me the real old-fashioned mountain food. This was a temptation, but would mean delaying a half day. I had written my family about meeting me the last weekend in May and didn't want to risk missing the rendezvous, so I settled for a picture of the farm. A patch of strawberries delayed me again just beyond Simmons Gap, but I finally reached High Top Lean-To on a western slope just as the sun was setting behind Massanutten Mountain in the Shenandoah Valley. The colours were brilliant, from smoky to bright red, then to blue-green. The wind blew cold, so I slept at the fireplace using the poncho as a windbreak, but didn't manage to keep warm enough to sleep very much. A shelter facing west isn't much good except in hot weather. My thoughts wandered back to the curious shapes the clouds had taken during the day. One looked like a football, one like an aircraft carrier, and another like a drawn-out layer cake. Waiting at Swift Run Gap in the morning was Ranger Hopper with a copy of the News Virginian containing the story. Before leaving, he introduced me to the manager of Swift Run Tavern, who insisted on giving me breakfast. While eating, I glanced over the write-up, which included one of the pictures taken at Rockfish Gap in a long column. Some of the copy included questions he hadn't thought to ask. One such excerpt reads, I asked him how he goes about finding springs, and his eyes twinkled as if he was the only one who knew where the gold mine was, and said, Oh, I just stumble on them. The comeback to that was easy. I mailed a card to editor Hersey, informing him I used a peach stick. In the year 1716, long before the Revolution, Governor Spotswood of the Virginia colony led a party of men he called the Knights of the Golden Horseshoe on an exploratory trip across the Blue Ridge, probably at Swift Run Gap. A commemorative plaque has been placed there, and the highway is called the Spotswood Trail. This expedition did not result in a westward movement of settlers, probably because of the difficult terrain. The western slopes of the Blue Ridge and the Shenandoah Valley were populated mostly by way of the valley southward from Pennsylvania. A Jesuit priest had already drawn a chart of that area as early as 1632. Through warming weather I travelled on, with Lewis Spring as my objective, and passed the shelter at Bear Fence Mountain, even though a thunderstorm was brewing. That was a mistake. The storm struck with unusual fury in late afternoon, and conditions became so bad, with visibility almost zero, that I followed the Skyline Drive from Booton's Gap. During the worst of the downpour, a car came by and stopped. When their offer of a ride was declined, the occupants left without waiting for an explanation. By the time I reached the next trail crossing, the rain had eased and the woods were bright with a ghostly shining as I slogged through the wetness to reach Lewis Spring Shelter long after dark. My fire wouldn't burn properly, and the damp cold penetrated my blanket bag. This was one of the many times when I regretted not bringing a down sleeping bag. Yet keeping one dry enough to be effective would have been almost impossible. Plastic was not available then. Next day, a man from Baltimore told me the temperature at his home was 40 degrees. On the mountain it must have been at least 10 degrees colder. East of this area are the headwaters of Rapidan River, which flows between Fork Mountain and Doubletop Mountain. Along the stream and reached by a few miles of side trail is Rapidan Camp, favourite fishing retreat of former President Herbert Hoover. The camp is so close to the river that the President was able to fish for trout from the veranda. Shenandoah Park was then in the process of development. At Big Meadows, the lodge and the restaurant were not yet open, but the service station had snacks and a few staple items available. According to the Little Black Notebook, my breakfast was peaches and bread. Big Meadows is a sprawling campground about midway of the park. Farther along, I turned aside to Dark Hollow Falls, leaving the pack behind as usual. The pitch was steep, and keeping my equilibrium without the pack was difficult. My feet didn't want to reach the ground. That pack had become a part of my natural balance. Coming back up, I met Robert Lamb and his father of Reading, Pennsylvania. They said they often hiked the trail near the city. Back on the AT, I was singing Rose of Tralee when rounding a bend and came upon a family of 3. When I apologised for the racket, they smiled, and then walked and talked with me until they turned back toward the drive. Hawksbill, elevation 4049, is the highest point in Shenandoah Park. The summit is on a loop trail between the AT and the drive. This peak is topped with red spruce, more suitable to the Northwoods. The same species also found at high elevations in the Smokies, the Mount Rogers area, and West Virginia. Shenandoah Park contains the northern and southern limits of various plants, providing a variety of specimens almost as great as the Smokies. One difference between the two parks is that the Smokies was mostly virgin timber, while the Shenandoah had been settled by hundreds of families and is now reverting to wilderness. The trail goes through Skyland, a resort at the southern end of Stony Man Mountain, the second highest point in the park at 4,010 feet. Grazing there at trailside was a fine-looking bay horse, obviously someone's prized mount, well-groomed and geared with a western saddle and a lariat coiled on the pommel. Just beyond were the stables, where a man was painting the wheel of an old carriage. He said the horse was trained for trick riding and belonged to Mr. Lewis, proprietor of the Riding Academy. As we talked, a group of colourful riders came from the corral, and Mr. Lewis joined them riding the bay. The roustabout got them to pose for a picture. Afterward, Ranger L.Y. Berg approached. He also had heard about me from Pete Johnson. Ranger Berg offered to do anything he could to help me along, adding wistfully that he had long wanted to try the trip himself. This is typical of the men who live and work in the parks. The ones I have known love the wilderness and the creatures that roam there. To them, cutting a tree is almost like killing an animal, and neither should be done without good reason. Their busiest time is during the tourist season, so they get no chance to tour themselves or take long hiking trips. Eastward from Skyland is Old Rag Mountain, separated from the main ridge by a deep and narrow gorge. It is the most spectacular peak in the Central Appalachians, resembling on a smaller scale the Goat Rocks of the Cascades in Washington state. Old Rag is reached by a side trail down White Oak Canyon, passing scenic waterfalls before crossing the Old Rag Valley and traversing the shadowed Rimrock. This mecca of hikers attracts many thousands of people every year, just as Katahdin does. The first of the Bird's Nest shelters, financed and designed by former Senator Harry F. Byrd Sr., is on Old Rag. North of Skyland is an area of blackstone cliffs described in park literature as rock strata turned on end by some great upheaval in the past. They consist of huge boulders like stone walls without mortar. One had fallen directly on the trail. A ranger I met later said he would notify officials so it would be removed. Geologically, the Blue Ridge in Virginia is mainly quartzite rock, obviously upthrust through limestone areas of the Central Valley and Atlantic coastal plain. The ridge rocks are generally volcanic in nature, with many colours and kinds of materials displayed. The valley limestone and shale areas indicate the area was once underwater. The shales contain many fossils. By early evening, the lone expedition came to Mary's Rock, a great boulder pile overlooking Thornton Gap. The rock was named for his wife by Francis Thornton, who claimed the surrounding area and built a house in 1733. A toll road was built through the gap about 1800 to provide a route for farmers in the Shenandoah Valley to haul crops eastward to market. The inn in the gap had just closed, but an employee got me some candy bars, the only food items available. He said some people had parked there and gone back to the shelter at Pass Mountain to stay overnight. Preferring a lone camp, I passed the side trail and slept at trailside. Starting early for reasons of hunger, I came to Elk Wallow, but the lodge had not yet opened. Shenandoah National Park is an area returned to wilderness after being occupied by farmers for many years. Cattle raising was also common. Thousands of mountaineers lived there before the park was established, but life was hard. They moved to resettlement homesteads nearby or relocated elsewhere. The idea for the park was promoted by Harold Allen, an early member of the Potomac Appalachian Trail Club, in a brochure printed and distributed by George H. Judd, a Washington publisher, in 1924. The plan was endorsed by the Pollock family, which had established the resort at Skyland 30 years before. Tentative authorization came in 1926. The Potomac Appalachian Trail Club was organized to establish the AT along the crest of the Blue Ridge in Virginia, including the area that became the park, and to foster appreciation and use of the park. The Skyline Drive later disrupted the original route so much that it was replaced by a new trail built by the CCC. At Hogback Overlook, I paused to photograph Massanutten Mountain in the valley westward, the picture including 5 of 7 consecutive bends in the Shenandoah River. The name Massanutten supposedly derived from a cynical old man declaring they looked to him like a big old Massanutten. By mid-afternoon I was out of the park and came in early evening to Route 522, where canned foods and bread were available at an inn. Then began a hectic quest for Mosby shelter by flashlight, through an apple orchard and a section of recently logged timber. That old lean-to looked mighty welcome when finally found. Supper consisted of condensed vegetable soup, 8 serving size, a large can of peaches and most of a loaf of bread. The famine was over, at least for a while. Wood ticks were becoming a problem as I hiked through crisp, cool weather, along dirt roads mostly, to Linden, where a store down the road from the trail crossing provided the usual staples. A thunderstorm was threatening again by the time I came to Ashby Shelter. I decided to stop early, since my boots and clothing needed repairs. Only one thing marred my stay after the storm bypassed down a valley. A phoebe had built its nest in the shelter, and she fluttered away, calling anxiously every time I entered. She must have come in after I was asleep, because she flew out again when I moved in the morning. Before cooking breakfast, I moved all gear outside so she wouldn't be disturbed again. Phoebes, like barn swallows, like to nest under the roof of a partially open building. The shelter in Ashby Gap was only a few minutes' walk from the highway crossing. 2 hikers had stayed in a tourist cabin there and were about to head south on the trail. They were Charles Woodbury, a Class D individual, member of the Appalachian Trail Conference, who worked at the New York Public Library, and Mark Howard, a member of the Adirondack Mountain Club, who worked for the New York Times. They planned to spend a week on the trail. North from the gap, the trail crossed a fence on a regular style, far different from those hectic crossings in the briar and barbed wire country. My noon stopping place was Three Springs Shelter. The sign said the springs were 75 yards away. Someone had added a 0. The distance paced off to about 230 yards. The one spring was so large that water might have been dipped by the barrel. North from Snickers Gap, the trail followed the state line between Virginia and West Virginia. The most unusual spot along this section is the Devil's Racecourse, on a side trail a quarter mile to the west. It is a long, gently sloping rock area like a ravine-filled level, with a brook so far beneath that you hear it but never see it. Early evening brought me to Wilson's Gap lean-to, built of stone and with an inside fireplace. I should have stopped but hastened on, thinking of the rendezvous. Mileage was marked on rocks and I timed myself, covering 4 miles in 55 minutes, which is practically running. At dark I stopped and slept at Trailside, a mile or two short of Key's Gap. The weather had been hazy and still was when the lone expedition arrived at Split Rock, overlooking Harper's Ferry and the juncture of the Shenandoah River into the Potomac. The 3 states of Maryland, Virginia and West Virginia meet at this historic point. Harper's Ferry was a focal point before and during the Civil War. John Brown, with only 20 men, captured the town and some of its citizens in 1859 as part of a planned campaign to end slavery. 2 days later, he and his band were killed or captured by a detachment of troops commanded by Robert E. Lee, then a colonel, with Lieutenant J.E.B. Stewart second in command. During the war, a few years later, the town changed hands several times and the railroad bridge was destroyed and rebuilt repeatedly. Harper's Ferry is now maintained as a National Historical Park by the National Park Service. The headquarters of the Appalachian Trail Conference, formerly located in Washington, D.C., is now in Harper's Ferry near the trail route. The view from Split Rock shows the Potomac northwestward between West Virginia and Maryland and eastward through the gorge toward Washington. At one time a ferry crossing was necessary, but a new bridge had just been completed and the trail relocated over it, coming down from Split Rock over a steep trailway. That long haul over the Blue Ridge Mountains of Virginia had finally ended, and the lone expedition was now within striking distance of the halfway point. No one had ever come this far before. One effort before the war had ended just short of here. Captain Avery and several others had hiked all the trail, but not in one trip. That was the challenge remaining.